He had not seen her in years, and yet every sunset, his eyes searched the same edge of the forest, the same broken path, as if memory alone could summon her shape from the dark. His hands still curled in sleep, the way they once held her small fragile frame. The others had forgotten the storm, the night she vanished, the scent of rain on wool, the silence that followed, but he had not. He carried the absence like a wound hidden beneath fur and time, a hollow echo where her warmth used to be. And though the world around him shifted, though the seasons whispered forward, something in him stayed behind, suspended between what was and what should have been. And then one night, when the sky hung heavy with stormlight, and the wind moved like a breath held too, long she came limping through the trees, older, slower, wounded, but unmistakably her, and in that instant time cracked open, and memory became reality, and everything he had lost, everything he had mourned, returned with a single shared breath in the space between them. Each morning he woke before the others, sitting still beneath the trees, while light filtered through the canopy in long golden ribbons, his breath slow, his eyes scanning a forest that had long since grown familiar, and yet he watched it as though hoping it would change, as though something might return that had once been lost. He moved through the days with purpose, but without urgency, choosing the quietest paths, the shaded places, the silent work of peeling bark, arranging stones, gathering food. He never rushed, never played. He would pause sometimes beside a patch of flattened grass, where nothing grew anymore, or near the curve of the stream, where two shapes once sat together. The other gorillas had learned not to disturb him, not out of fear, but from instinct, a quiet understanding that he was somewhere else, even when he was among them in the evenings. When the troops settled into their nests, he remained awake longer than the rest, gazing out beyond the fence, into the dark, beyond it, as though listening for a sound he couldn't name. There was no drama to his sorrow, no display, only a stillness too precise to be peace, a rhythm of gestures too careful to be routine. Each movement touched by memory, shaped by something missing, not forgotten, not grieved and gone, but present like a breath that never leaves the lungs, a quiet ache woven into the very shape of his days. It happened fast, a crack of thunder, a blur of movement. Voices raised fences down the scent of rain and panic in the air. The lamb had pressed herself against him, small, shaking her heartbeat, fluttering like wings under his palm. And then she was gone, lifted away, wrapped in strange arms, vanishing into the chaos he had reached for her. But too late, the noise swallowed her. The rain washed away her scent, and the clearing emptied, leaving only the mud and the echo of her cry. He waited, at first certain she would return, watching the same path for hours, unmoving, silent, ignoring food, ignoring sleep. Each sound drew his gaze, each breeze carried the hope of her smell. But no shape came, no breath, no soft weight curling into him at night. Days blurred into nights, and still he searched his steps slower, each time his calls growing softer until they stopped. Entirely something in him had fractured, a quiet, invisible splinter that no one saw, but everyone felt. He no longer joined the group in play, no longer responded when touched. His world shrank to shadows and habit, to the space she once filled. He slept in strange places, where the ground still held her warmth. His hands curled around nothing, his chest rising and falling as if waiting for a heartbeat. Not his own time moved forward, but he did not. Each season passed like fog around him. Bright leaves fell, snow gathered, the forest bloomed again, but the cold remained inside, untouched by sun or sound. The others learned to move around him, not with fear, but respect for the silence he carried, the grief too deep to disturb. And though no one spoke of it, the absence lived in him louder than any cry, longer than any winter. Let me pause for just a moment and ask you something from the heart. Have you ever had someone, maybe a person, maybe even an animal, remember you after years apart? That moment when eyes meet and something lost returns without a single word. If that's ever happened to you, share your story in the comments. I'd truly love to hear it. And if this kind of story speaks to you, don't forget to follow. There's so much more ahead, and some of it might just find a place in your heart. It wasn't loud, it wasn't sudden. It was a scent carried low on the breeze, barely there, but it stopped him mid-step. Something in his chest tightened, as if memory itself had a pulse, and it had just skipped. He turned toward the far pen, where the injured sheep had been brought just hours ago, and for the first time in years he did not continue his usual path. Instead, he stood still, staring across the clearing, heart pounding without reason. The air felt thinner, his breath slower, and then he saw her not. Clearly not fully, but enough, a familiar tilt of the head, the hesitant limp, the way her ears flicked when the wind shifted. His mind flooded with images, not sharp, but overwhelming flashes of warmth, of weight curled beside him, of a soft bleat in the dark. Part of him surged forward, the instinct to run, to reach her, to know. But another part held back, frozen by fear. The years stretched long between then and now. What if it wasn't her? What if she didn't remember? What if she turned away, and the ache returned sharper than before? He stood there, caught between silence and movement, between the safety of sorrow and the risk of hope. The sheep shifted slightly, her gaze drifting through the trees, and in that second their eyes met, and something old cracked open inside him. Not loud, not bright, but real. The kind of recognition that doesn't need time to explain. He didn't move, he didn't dare. But the wind carried her scent again, and it was her. It was her. It had to be. And though everything in him trembled, he stepped forward, not fast, not bold, just one quiet step toward what once was and might still be. He moved without sound, each step placed with care, as if the earth might shatter beneath him if he rushed. The air between them was thick, not with fear, but with memory unspoken. Her head lifted slowly, ears twitching, breath trembling. She did not run, did not flinch, just watched him with eyes that held something ancient, something buried. His gaze met hers, and neither looked away. Not for a second. A soft wind stirred the dust, and with it came the faintest echo of scent, familiar, warm, unmistakable. Her nostrils flared, her body tense, then stilled, as if some instinct deep within her had caught a thread she hadn't known was still there. He paused, just a few steps away, shoulders rising with a breath held too long and released in silence. The world around them seemed to disappear. The distant calls, the rustling leaves, the quiet hum of night all fell away. She blinked once slowly, then took a step forward, a limp still in her stride, but no hesitation in her eyes. He lowered himself to the earth, gently folding into the space between them, like a memory slipping into place. She reached him, pressed her head against his chest, and in that touch, everything returned. The storm, the loss, the longing, the nights alone, and the hope that never died. He let out a sound, low and raw, something between breath and sorrow and joy, something only she had ever drawn from him. She nuzzled closer, the years falling away like dust from old stone, and there in the stillness of that impossible reunion, something inside both of them broke and healed at once. They remembered, and in remembering became whole again. The days that followed unfolded like breath, returning after too long, underwater, slow, unsure, but filled with quiet wonder. Each morning she woke with her body curled against his warmth, and each evening he watched the sun sink with her beside him. Her presence no longer imagined, but real, solid. Grounding, he began to move differently, not with the weight of absence, but with the steadiness of purpose again. He reached for fruit with interest. Again he watched the sky, not in waiting, but in peace. She too changed. Her limp faded, her eyes grew brighter, and when he pressed his forehead gently to hers, she leaned into him without fear. Without question, sometimes he would offer her leaves, not because she needed them, but because once he had done the same and she had taken them, and those gestures bloomed again like small familiar flowers in a forest reborn. The rangers saw it in the way he sat with her paw resting against his hand, in the way she followed his shadow, never straying far from his side. They didn't need to relearn each other. They simply resumed as though the years had paused, not erased what lived between them, and in the stillness of their reunified rhythm, there was something holy, something whole. No song, no cry, no grand return, just the gentle weight of a bond that had waited and endured and now breathed again in every shared glance, in every small act, in every heartbeat echoing the other. And that was enough that had always been enough. Some connections do not fade with time. They do not ask for words or explanations. They live quietly beneath the surface, waiting not to be remembered, but to be felt again. And when the moment comes, they return not loudly, but surely, with the soft certainty of something that never truly left. He was not the same, and neither was she, but in finding each other, they became more whole than they had ever been alone, not because the past was erased, but because it was finally held with gentleness. Some bonds do not break. They pause, they endure, they wait, and when the silence ends, they do not ask, "Why only if you're ready to begin again?"